When there's a killer on the loose in LA in the 70s or 80s, there's only one man to call, and that's Bronson. So scumbags beware, because 10 to Midnight is next on Drew Reviews. Guys, Andrew here, and I just got done watching 10 to Midnight for about the third time. It's a lot of fun. It's directed by J. Lee Thompson, who's a frequent collaborator with Charles Bronson. You know, he did The White Buffalo and all kinds of movies in the 70s. In the 80s, he did this. He did Murphy's Law, Death Wish 4, The Crackdown, which is ridiculous. He did a movie called Firewalker that I love and I want to review on this channel. But this story centers around Charles Bronson's character, Leo Kessler. He's an LA detective trying to track down this killer by the name of Warren Stacy, played by Gene Davis. Just masterfully played by this young man. He is so unsympathetic. And that's one thing about this character I after doing some research that I really liked. Apparently J. Lee Thompson told him to play this character really unsympathetically. That way, when they have their big showdown at the end of the movie and Kessler has a decision to make, that way there's more impact for the viewer there. The movie also stars Lisa Eilbacher as Kessler's daughter Lori, and she's really good in this. Andrew Stevens plays Detective McCann. And Wilford Brimley's in this movie, so you know, diabetes. And you know right away the character of Warren Stacy's just off. He follows these girls in a theater and has this real creepy vibe. He leaves the theater, goes out and finds this girl who spurned his advances at the office, and this ridiculous scene. It's glorious. Her and her partner are making love in this van. Her name's Betty, and he walks up and he is completely naked save for a pair of latex gloves and a knife. it's totally ridiculous. And of course he stabs the man, and they're running through the forest outside of LA. I think it was filmed at the Hollywood Reservoir. They're running through the forest naked. It kind of reminds me of that scene in American Werewolf in London where he's having the dreams that he's chasing a deer. It's ridiculous. So he kills her, shows up at the funeral. Everyone's suspicious of him because he's just an odd guy anyway. Later on, he's looking for her diary because it might be evidence against him, so he goes to her place, and her roommate comes in and he has to kill her, and so now there's two dead bodies, and Kessler's really on him now. They bring him in for interrogation, and there's this hilarious scene where they've gone through his house, and there's this like archaic sex toy that Kessler finds, and it's delivered in a way that only Bronson can do it, where he's like, "What's this, Warren? What is this? You know what this is used for?" And I'm not going to say the line, but you you need to see it just for the delivery of the line. It's great. Later on, Stacy ends up stalking Lori Kessler, Bronson's daughter. She's interning as this nurse at this place, and he starts leaving obscene phone calls. And so McCann and her end up kind of hitting it off. He's kind of watching her, and they have this really interesting dynamic. Their little love affair kind of reminds me of what me and my wife have, how it's all like subtle jabs, but there's a lot of love there. But in the end, Kessler doesn't have enough to put Stacy away for stalking his daughter, So he ends up going into the crime lab and getting blood from the first victim and planting it on his clothes. And of course this sets Stacy off just because, as he knows, and as we the viewer know, he's not wearing any clothes when he's killing these people. He's running around buck naked all around LA. It's really funny. And so he goes off. And so a trial's set, and Stacy's lawyer, played by Jeffrey Lewis, who's a frequent collaborator with like Clint Eastwood. He's in a lot of those movies. He just plays this shyster lawyer. He gets in McCann's ear and about this evidence being placed, and so he looks into it and finds out that Leo did indeed plant that evidence on Warren Stacy's clothes. And so, of course, he ends up getting fired from the force. Bronson does. And so at that point, he ends up following Warren Stacy all over LA, which is really funny. And the movie all comes to a head in like the last 25 minutes. The last 15 minutes of this movie are just excellent. When he's stalking Lori and her roommates, and he's chasing her down the street in L.A. With no clothes on, just his gloves, and Kessler's running behind him. There's cops on the way. It all just comes to a head right in the middle of the street, and I'm not going to ruin the ending for you, but it's really good. So there were some things about this movie I disliked. Warren Stacy's boss, the boss of him and Betty and Karen, the two girls he murdered. There's some really dodgy acting there. Oh no, Betty's dead. I didn't buy that for a second. Took me out of the movie. Some of the characters that he kills aren't that likable, like Betty and Karen. Betty was this girl from the office who slept around with everybody, and when they did the autopsy report on her, she had like hepatitis and she was still sleeping around. So I'm like, I feel sorry for her, but at the same time, I'm like, chick, come on. I also wasn't the biggest fan of Jeffrey Lewis's character in this movie. I mean, he played it fine. I mean, he comes off as just this prick shyster lawyer. Whenever they are introducing the character and the DA and Stacy are talking to him, he's like picking at his nails like he'd rather be somewhere else. And it's just, it's so slimy. But that's another reason I should like it. But he's just so dislikable. He had to kind of be on the dislike list. As far as likes in this movie, Charles Bronson, at this stage in his career, he was pretty much what he was. He wasn't going to cover any new ground. He does show a little bit of emotion, like when he has to go to the girl's parents' house and tell her that she's passed away. The characters of Lori and McCann I really liked, and I really liked their dynamic. Like I said, it reminded me of me and my wife a little bit. This film was put out by Canon, and it has that gritty Canon feel, but it doesn't feel like cheap B-movie-ish. Cinematography was done by Adam Greenberg, who a year later would do The Terminator, and so it looks more like that. Not cheap, but just gritty. When I'm talking about likes, I have to talk about the opening scene, the kill in the woods, and everything that set up to that. I love how Warren Stacy went to the theater and kind of hit on these girls and kind of made a scene, and then left the theater and had an ironclad alibi, pretty much, for whenever he drove off, went to the woods, and killed this Betty. And those scenes were like gorgeous, just running through the woods and everything. It looked like spring, like everything was green, and the rest of the movie is all L.A. and streets, and so I kind of thought the movie needed that. And then how he sneaks back into the theater creepily, and it just all ties together really well. The end movie too, that's how you do a climax to a movie right there. How he's chasing her, he's being chased by the dad, there's a police helicopter, cops closing in. Of course, Bronson's got the gun drawn on Stacy, and he's, doing his villainous speech, and I just loved that, and that brought the movie up like another quarter star for me. So I'm going to give this movie a 6.4. I don't think it's quite 6.5. But it's a real good watch. My wife, she's not big into crime dramas. She watched it with me, and she said, yeah, that was a whole lot better than what I expected. So, if you have a wife like mine who you might have hesitations, will she like this, will she not? She probably will. There's enough female dynamic in the movie to go along with all the crime and all the heavy-handed action. So definitely check out 10 to Midnight. It's one of my favorite 80s Bronson movies. Leave a comment down in the comments section. Let me know what you thought about it. Let me know what you thought about the review. Give me a like and subscribe as always. And as always, I'm Andrew, and I'll see you down the line.